Good morning, Insta, and good morning, Facebook. We're live for Coffee and Questions on this crazy, bright, sunny Friday morning. I hope everyone is having a good week and is ready to enjoy a coffee with me. Good morning, Mum. Mum, you were the first person online. Good morning. You're super quick. Hello, everyone jumping on Insta. I've got heaps of people. Hey, Jojo. Hello, Eloise. Good morning, Catherine. I just realized I'm 7 minutes late. That's probably why you're all jumping on straight away. Sorry. I've been trying to figure out my new tripod system. I'll have to post a photo. It's definitely better. It's not, still not foolproof, but you know, I'm not legit here. So it's all good. Catherine says I'm on the trainer and dying. Well done. Well, once you finish, you can enjoy a coffee, Catherine. All right, so I actually have no questions this morning. It was entirely spam. So if anybody has anything for me, please ask away. But I'm basically just going to jump straight into it this morning, I think. Feel free to jump in if you have any questions, comments, concerns, just want to do a bit of ISO banter. But today was the last day before some of our restrictions get eased a little bit here in Queensland. So we get to drive a little bit further by tomorrow, parks are open, group training can start with 10 people. So what I wanted to do is actually talk you through some strategies to help you with that kind of return to training. I know a lot of you have still been doing something, but there'll be a massive increase in sort of training like volume or intensity, I think, with group training kicking back off again. And nutrition is a really key component of that as we head into this sort of next phase. So for some of you, it's like perfectly timed because that kicks off tomorrow. But for some of you, you might be a little bit later. So you might need to watch this back in a few weeks' time when your restrictions get eased as well. Catherine said coffee is why I ride. Good morning, Megan. All right, so that's what I wanted to cover off on today because, yeah, I've got no questions. So I thought I'd make use of the time and give you something practical and something you can actually implement and follow straight away and something that's going to help you right now with nutrition. So why don't we just tuck straight in? I'll try and keep up with comments on Facebook. Where are you, Facebook? Here you are. I'll keep up with that and then I'll keep up with what's going on Instagram. And thankfully, I don't have my spy belt covering the comment section this time, so I can see them super clearly without having to touch my phone, which may fall off the tripod. Definitely not legit here at Dietitian Approved. We're just winging it. All right, so let's get into it. Let's go through 5 strategies to help you now with what I would suggest is a bit of a return to training. Okay, because I think I'll try and not knock all this stuff off my desk. I think that's a really important thing to think about right now. If you suddenly go from not doing a lot to suddenly doing a lot, then we want to make sure that we are doing the right things with nutrition to support that, to 1, get the most out of your training, and 2, just to make sure we don't compromise our immune system as well. So number 1, what I want you to do is have a think about what your daily fueling needs are as you go from whatever you have been doing to what you're then going to start doing. So there may be a bit of a jump in the amount of training that you're doing, and it might be a bit of a jump in the intensity as well. So if you go from doing not a lot to just doing something, you actually have a big sharp increase in how much fuel you need compared to if you're super fit and super efficient, then you don't have that kind of jump. It's not as big a spike. So just, I think you need to adapt to that increased training load quite quickly. We know that in only sort of 3 days of not doing a good job with your nutrition is enough for a female to drop out their menstrual function. And for males, you can also affect your male sex hormones as well. So making sure, I guess, that what you're eating each day aligns with your training load and you can align it really quickly. Okay, so usually our appetite's not a good indicator of what's actually going on and what you need. It's delayed a little bit, and it can be delayed by sort of a week or two before you start sort of feeling hungry again. And then you're suddenly ravenous because your body's like, hang on a minute, what have you done to me? You've just put me in a big shock. You need to catch that back up with some nutrition. And so then you start to kind of eat more than potentially what you need. So I would, if you need help, like reach out to a sports dietitian who can help you do that and match how much fuel you need with your training load, and just make sure you align that really quickly. Okay, so day 1, day 2, day 3, you're doing a good job of eating to support training, as that suddenly might increase. What did Catherine say? Okay, question, at what point is best to rebook with you? Catherine, we can talk about that offline. You're hilarious. And then Abigail has asked, also, is it safe to exercise on your period? Absolutely. In fact, there's some good evidence around being able to train harder during that period because of your hormones. So absolutely safe, including, like you've listed, cycling, weightlifting, body weight exercise. Absolutely. And you may actually find that you train harder and better during that period because of your hormone shifts. So definitely safe, and in fact you might find that you do a good job of your training through there. Good morning, Simone. All right, so number 2 in your return to training, make sure you're focusing, and Joe, you'll love this one, make sure you're focusing on getting enough good quality protein. We want to try and spread that throughout the day. So particularly if you go from not doing a lot, sitting on the couch watching Netflix, to then suddenly doing some exercise or doing some weight training or any sort of training really, your muscles are just going to be searching for those building blocks for recovery and repair. So we want to make sure we're doing a good job of giving them those building blocks of protein regularly. And we've talked about this before, but your protein requirements are like a cup. So you want to be filling your cup regularly throughout the day. Joe's like, woo, protein. Yes. Favorite topic of conversation, Joe. So we want to fill your protein cup up at regular intervals. So breakfast, lunch and dinner, definitely. And then potentially even snacks as well, depending on what sort of exercise you're doing. We don't want to underfill it. So this cup's not quite full, like that. We're not doing a good job of our recovery if we're doing that. And then also if we overfill it and it overflows, then we're essentially kind of wasting that protein in a way. We will still oxidize it for energy, but when it's not helping for muscle protein synthesis to its maximum effect. So I would suggest that if you go from not doing a lot to suddenly doing a fair bit of training or just trying to build that back up again, that you're focusing on 1, fueling, so eating enough to support training, and then, 2, distributing your protein quite regularly across the day just to help, because it's a bit of a shock to the system if you suddenly put some extra training in there, and so your body's just waiting and seeking that extra building blocks and that extra nutrition. So you make sure you're giving it to it, and that's how you get maximum results. You'll do a good job of recovery, which we'll talk about in a second, and then you'll just get the most out of that training session so you can back up and go again as well. And it's also just making sure that you're not sort of compromising your immune system by putting yourself in the red through that as well. So that's a big key focus at the moment. If you're returning to training, then we want to make sure that we're not going too hard too fast, because that does compromise our immune system, and that is not what we want to be doing right now. So that kind of segues nicely onto making sure you're doing a really good job of your recovery nutrition, which is number 3. So we talk about a bit of a window of opportunity, trying to get some nutrition in within sort of 30 to 45 minutes after training. Now that becomes more important when you're doing double session days, which you may not be doing right now, but maybe you are. But I think even whether you're doing a double session day or not, it's probably still a good idea to just get in the habit of doing that anyway now, because it also does make your body relax a little bit and not sort of compromise our immune system in that sense as well. So a good dietitian can help you formulate your specific recovery meal for you, because it is quite individualized, but we want to be ticking off 4 boxes, which we talked about last week as well. So we want to be ticking off protein, we want to be ticking off carbohydrate, we want to be ticking off vitamins and minerals, And we also want to be rehydrating, and just water is fine for that. So they're the 4 boxes that you do need to tick in that recovery window. And I would probably be a little bit more aggressive with that right now if you suddenly return to extra training compared to normal. Okay, so kind of think about overdoing it with your nutrition at the moment, just to make sure that you're giving your body everything that it needs, all those building blocks, but we're also not dampening our immune system by doing that. So we just need to be a bit more protective and be a bit careful with that as well. So Joe's asked, is it 30 to 60 minutes that we should be fueling before and after exercise? So good question. Good morning, Aidan, the dietitian. So before exercise, Joe, depends on how much time you've got really and what sort of session you're doing. So if you're talking about gym, Joe, then yeah, really it depends on your gut tolerance, but yeah, 30 to 60 minutes before is probably fine. And then recovery after. So I would be focusing on getting some nutrition in within sort of 30 to 45 minutes, just because we know that our recovery hormones and enzymes peak at about 60 minutes after exercise. And so you want those building blocks there ready to hit that peak. So remember, if we're eating, that process of digestion takes a bit of time. We've got to get it in our mouth, goes down our esophagus into our tummy, where or our enzymes break it down into single units, and then we absorb it across the gut lining into our bloodstream, and then you can use those building blocks for recovery. So that process doesn't happen instantaneously unless you're eating single unit blocks like glucose and, you know, amino acids instead of a protein food. So I would be trying to get a more complicated meal in within 30 minutes. And then if it's more simple, sort of already digested, broken down, it could be closer to 45. So that those building blocks are there in the bloodstream, ready to go to those muscles that have just worked for recovery, and build all those hormones and enzymes that we need as well. So that's my answer for timing pre and post, Joe. So pre is totally dependent on what sport and exercise you're doing, how much time you've got, and what you tolerate. So some people just can't eat sort of 2-3 hours before training hard. Whereas other people, I've seen a triathlete smash a massive bowl of porridge and 2 pieces of jam on toast and then run hard 10 minutes later. So totally personal preference, but it's just about getting the right things in a timing that suits you. Good morning, Margie Lewis. All right, so that's my first 3 strategies for trying to manage a bit of a return to training at the moment. And like I say return, right, because I think most people have been doing something, but it's more around like return, I mean, as in, all right, let's kind of get stuck into it now. Like, let's get a regular pattern, get a regular rhythm. And now that group training is starting in Queensland. Joe said thanks, and I'm not going to repeat the other thing that you said, Joe. Funny. And Catherine said, I fueled with a coffee today. Well done, Catherine. All right, so number 1 was just making sure you match your daily fueling to your training load as that increases, and you need to do that quite quickly. Number 2 is just to make sure that you've got enough protein in your life and that it's spread nice and evenly throughout the day. And then number 3 is doing a really good job of your recovery nutrition at the moment, okay? And a sports dietitian can help you with all those things. Like, we can write you a specific plan to help you with all of that, or talk you through just the kind of strategies to help you with whatever sport you're doing, and questions like timing as well, and just making sure that you're doing a good job for you. So I guess my strategies are general. It's really hard to be specific on here, but these are things that I really want you to start thinking about and start focusing on. All right, so number 4. Good morning, Kira Hedgeland. How are you going down there in the GC? You guys surviving? All right, so number 4, we've ticked off fueling, we've ticked off protein, and we've ticked off recovery. Then we want to make sure that we're also doing a really good job of our micronutrient intake. Okay, and if you've done the Stay Healthy During Isolation course, or go through that specifically, exactly what you need to be doing. If you haven't done that yet, then I definitely recommend you do it. It's definitely worth doing at a time like this, just to get some good foundations with your nutrition and make sure you are doing a good job of your micronutrients. So I'm not suggesting you take a supplement. You don't need to take a multivitamin or anything like that. You just need to be doing a really good job of eating a wide variety of foods and getting good plant-based diversity. So making sure you're doing things like ticking off your 2 fruit, 5 veggies every day, making sure you get enough fiber in your life. We also want to make sure that we're getting enough calcium, and that's not a limiting nutrient because that's so important for our bones and our teeth. But calcium is also important for every single muscle contraction. So we need to make sure that that's not a limiting factor right now. And the other big component of like our minerals is iron, making sure that we are not deficient in iron. It's quite common for athletes that I work with to be deficient in iron because they're at a high risk group. So things like our endurance athletes are high risk, females are high risk. And long distance sort of runners are high risk too. So if you haven't had your iron level screened ever, it's probably worth doing. Like I suggest most of my athletes kind of get an iron screen once a year and just make sure it's okay, because it's something that's easily fixable with diet and something you always want to be on top of if you're an exerciser, particularly in any of those groups. So endurance athlete, because we bleed a bit through our gut when we train. Every time you pound the pavement, when you strike your heel, you actually burst open your red blood cells, and that loses iron that way as well. It's called heel strike hemolysis. So we're losing iron every time we go for a run. And females obviously have monthly losses of iron. And then I guess the other key group that is a high risk would be any growing body, so adolescents, anyone that's still growing and trying to build all the body tissues. We need lots of iron for that. And I don't know if anybody's at altitude, but that would be another high risk group. If you live at altitude potentially, or if you're doing, I don't think anyone's doing an altitude training camp right now, that would be silly. But just in case you are, then yeah, iron's definitely a key one for that. All right, Catherine has said, what's my opinion on cold brew coffee? It's coffee, Catherine. Take it or leave it, hot or cold. And probiotics, what's my opinion on those? So definitely, again, there's a whole module on gut health and immunity in the Stay Healthy during isolation course. So that one I answer all those questions on probiotics and what you should be doing and what you shouldn't be doing, the strains that are good for what, and how you can get those from food sources as well. So you can actually do that module individually if you wanted to, rather than having to do the whole course. So I can link in here. The link for that specific module if you want to go through the gut health module. It's really cool. It was one of my favorites doing it. There's lots of good information in there. And I haven't tested the YoPro protein bars yet. I haven't been able to find them. I'll have a look again on the weekend. Yeah, I haven't been able to find them. So hold that thought. It's still on my list, Catherine, don't worry. All right, so that was number 4, making sure you're getting enough micronutrients. And if you need help in that, then you could do one of the modules in the Stay Healthy During Isolation course. We'd probably do a couple actually. I'd probably do the Foundations of Nutrition one, and I'd probably do the Gut Health and Immunity module. That covers off all of those things, and you could do that from the comfort of your own home. All right, and then I guess the 5th thing that I would suggest you consider at the moment with a bit of a return to training is some anti-inflammatory foods. So we're probably going to have a bit of an increase in our pro-inflammatory markers right now as we get back into re-establishing a bit more of a regular training routine. So there's a few sort of foods that you want to focus on that have those anti-inflammatory properties. So things like our omega-3s. So things like our deep sea fatty fish, like salmon and tuna, those sorts of things. And then some of the nuts and seeds have good omega-3 profile as well. And then polyphenols, which is a group of sort of flavonols polyphenols are a type of food chemical that have some good antioxidant, anti-inflammatory properties. So there's a range of foods that are really high in those. And again, that's something I go through the gut health module in the Stay Healthy During Isolation course. I give you a whole list of those foods that you should be trying to include in each day. And I think that focusing on that at the moment is going to just help make sure you don't get so sore, we're not doing too much damage by suddenly getting back into some training rhythm as well. So making sure that we're like soaking up all of our free radicals. They're not doing any extra cellular damage. And we're just, making sure we're the healthiest we can be through this phase. Good morning, Carly. And Gethin said hi from North Wales, UK. Hello, good morning. All right, so Kat wants to know on Facebook what's some good post-workout nutrition. So I'm going to rattle off a few ideas off the top of my head for you, Kat, but I guess it depends on, like in terms of volume and portions and things, it depends on like who you are and what your goals are, what sort of exercise you're doing and what your whole training week looks like as well. So again, we want to be like quite aggressive with recovery if we're doing multiple sessions in a day. But if we're not and we've got a day or two rest afterwards, then there's a bit of a different strategy. So if we're talking about sort of breakfast, then we want to be focusing on protein, carbs, vitamins and minerals and some fluids. So one option might be to do something like porridge or overnight oats and making sure you've got enough protein in there. So you've got like a nice high protein yogurt. You could use a bit of protein powder, or depending on where you are, you can get high protein milks, and then putting some color on there. So using some fresh fruit or some berries or frozen berries if you can't get any fresh at the moment. But that's like quite a nice balance, sort of carb, protein, vitamin and mineral type blend. If we're talking about like a dinner or a lunch meal, then it's just making sure you have those components on your plate as well. So we've got some sort of protein. So whether it's meat or fish or chicken, could be eggs, legumes, tofu, those sorts of things. Want some sort of carbohydrate food, so whether it's like your breads and cereals, like some rice or noodles or pasta, could be potato, sweet potato, corn, those sorts of things. And then trying to focus on getting lots of salad and veggies on your plate as well. So we're ticking off those 4 boxes in whatever meal that you're having. So if you need some specific help, Kat, with a recovery meal, reach out and we can write one for you depending on what time of day it is and what you're doing. But yeah, I guess there's 2 options for a brekkie and then also like a main sort of meal. All right, so guys, that's my 5 tips for kind of managing return to training at the moment with nutrition. I'll actually list those out somewhere for you to go back and read rather than having to watch all this through again, particularly if this is not sort of suitable for you right now. I may have jumped the gun for some of you where your restrictions haven't eased yet, but I'm just trying to help the Queenslanders who are kind of returning to group training from this weekend. So you're doing a good job of your nutrition straight away and there's no delays in that. Like we're jumping on the nutrition bandwagon ASAP to get the most out of our training, make sure we're not doing any damage and making sure our immune system is super supported. So if you've got those 5 foundations nailed, then I guess a couple of other things that you could consider would be some sort of supplementation. So depending on what sort of sport you're doing. Hang on, 2 secs, Kat. Comments are so distracting. So creatine might be something to consider if you're suddenly doing some strength stuff. And that doesn't necessarily mean lifting weights. It could be doing a strength component of cycling, like doing hills, or it could be a strength component of running and things like that. So it doesn't necessarily have to be lifting weights, tearing muscle fibers. Some sort of anti-inflammatory supplement may be worth considering too. Again, if you've got those foundations of nutrition sorted, so things like fish oil or curcumin. And I guess if anybody's been injured, I know a lot of people have been injured lately, then there's some nutrition strategies that you can do around collagen and return to training load to just make sure that you're not doing any like tendon or ligament damage as well. So again, so 3 sort of little sprinkles that you can put on your cake if you've got the foundations of your cake base sorted as well. So I guess food for thought, but definitely focus on those 5 and then some extra sort of strategies beyond that once you've got those foundations nailed. So Kat said, thanks heap, that's helpful. I'm also doing the isolation program. That's awesome, Kat. So you can go through and specifically go through that gut health module and like pick up all that probiotic, micronutrient, polyphenol information and use it straight away. And then you should also be through the foundation stuff to be making sure you're getting all your micronutrients from your fruit and veggies and things like that. So I hope you're enjoying the course, Kat. Give me a holler if you've got any questions on it, or if you've got any comments or feedback. I'd love to sort of know how you're going through it. Coffee's cold. All right, have we got any other questions? So Gethin asks, I'm a type 1 diabetic. Any recommendations on foods that will give me enough energy to go jogging in order to lose a bit of weight in the stomach area? Oh, Gethin, this forum is probably not the right space to answer that question for you. Being a type 1 diabetic, I'd probably prefer to talk to you one-on-one on that, rather than just give you some loose recommendations. I'm not really comfortable giving you general advice for something like that. So if you need help with type 1 diabetes management and exercise, then yeah, please give us a holler and we can organise a consult. But there's too many other questions I need to ask you before I can answer that appropriately, and I'd hate for you to take what I've said today and run with it and then have issues. So definitely reach out, Gethin, if you need help. All right, Joe has asked, corn is quite high in carbs. Should we limit the amount we eat, e.g. rather than thinking of it as a veggie that we can pile on our plate? Yes, absolutely. So corn, Joe, would fit into the starchy veggie group, and that's definitely higher in carbohydrate. So within that starchy veggie group, we've got potato, sweet potato, corn, and any of those sort of root vegetables. So things like parsnips and turnips and stuff as well, they're higher carbohydrate load. So corn and those other starchy ones I wouldn't suggest are free veggies that you can kind of eat freely because they have got a higher carbohydrate load. I'd put them on your plate as your carb serve. So half a cob of corn is a serve that has about 15 grams of carbs, and same as like a medium potato or a smallish sort of segment of sweet potato. They're all about 15 grams of carbs. So I'd put them on your plate as that. And then you get the added benefit of extra vitamins and minerals from them as well. But then you load up the rest of your plate with all of your free veggies. So yeah, their starchy veggie group, my fave. Thanks, Gal. You're welcome. And Gethin said, no problem, thank you. So sorry, Gethin, I know that's a bit of a cop-out, but yeah, I'd prefer to answer that question offline than in a forum where we can't have a good discussion around it. I don't feel like I can help you properly with me just sort of chatting at my screen. Catherine said, I'm back, had to go make my yogurt and muesli. Hilarious. All right, I'm going to wind up, Catherine, so unless you've got any crazy questions for me. And what I'll do, guys, is I'll actually write out my 5 tips for your return to training nutrition, and then I'll reshare them through the Dietitian Approved newsletter later this afternoon. So if you're not signed up to that, definitely jump on over to the website, or the Dietitian Approved Crew Facebook group or anywhere like that, and I'll post those up in there later on this afternoon so that you can go back and read through them again. And I guess if this is not sort of helpful for you right now, then I'd suggest you kind of go back and have a look at it when your sort of training load does start to go up again. Because I think it's so important that you do manage your nutrition through that rather than just kind of smashing through it and hoping that you'll be okay. Catherine said, now I'll be more organised next week with some tough ones for you. Don't do that to me, Catherine. It's too early in the morning for me to have an intelligent conversation. My coffee hasn't sunk in yet. In fact, I haven't even drunk it. It goes cold. I need to work on drinking it earlier. All right, guys, so if you've got no more questions, Catherine doesn't have any curly ones for me. I will send this out later this afternoon, so make sure you're on the Dietitian Approved newsletter list. You can jump onto the website at my.dietitianapproved.com.au, and there's a link on the homepage down the bottom that you can register for that. You can also jump over to the Dietitian Approved Crew Facebook group where I'll share this later as well. That's kind of like a closed little community of everyday athletes who are looking to maximize their nutrition in whatever sport they're doing. So that's kind of where I share most things, because it gets seen properly, and it's where we all band together and help support each other too. So definitely jump into that group if you're not there. I've got some exciting things planned for that group over the next sort of 6 months. So I guess watch this space. All right, team, thank you for joining me today on Coffee and Questions. I'm going to now finish my cold coffee, and I will see you next week. Bye.